Hybrid reliability, the 2026 Toyota Camry Hybrid, and the shifting 2026 car market are the only things anyone in the automotive industry is talking about right now. But underneath the flashy marketing and the glowing reviews, there is a brutal truth that car companies are desperate to keep hidden from the average buyer. Why are the world's biggest manufacturers, from Toyota and Honda to Ford and Hyundai, suddenly telling you that the 2026 hybrid lineup is the ultimate no-compromise solution for every driver on the planet? And what are the three massive lies they are using to sell you on these complex machines while they quietly phase out the simple gas-powered cars we've trusted for decades? If you have been looking at the marketing for the redesigned RAV4 or the newest Honda CR-V Hybrid and felt like the sales pitch was just a little too perfect, your gearhead instinct is absolutely right, because there is a massive gap between a manufacturer's brochure and the reality of owning a high-voltage vehicle for 15 years. By the time you finish this breakdown, you will understand the three specific deceptions being used to push hybrids into every driveway in America, Europe, and Australia. You will learn the hidden engineering truth about why these cars can actually be more expensive to own in the long run than the gas guzzlers they replaced. And stay tuned until the very end, because I'm going to reveal the one specific component that is almost never covered by your standard battery warranty that can brick your car in an instant and destroy its resale value. If you want car content that treats you like an adult with a brain and a budget to protect rather than just another marketing target, take a second to hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and join a community that values engineering truth over corporate hype. The first and perhaps most pervasive lie that car companies are telling you in 2026 is that hybrids are cheaper to maintain because they have fewer wearable parts like brake pads and starter motors. While it is true that regenerative braking saves your brake pads and the lack of a traditional starter on some systems reduces one minor failure point, this argument conveniently ignores the massive added complexity of having two entirely different propulsion systems crammed into one crowded engine bay. When you buy a 2026 Toyota Corolla Hybrid or a Ford F-150 Power Boost, you aren't buying a simpler machine. You are buying a vehicle that still has an internal combustion engine with oil, coolant, spark plugs, and filters, but is now also carrying a high-voltage battery pack, an inverter converter assembly, electric motor generators, and multiple complex thermal management systems to keep it all from overheating. Car companies want you to focus on the $50 you save on a brake job every 3 years while they distract you from the fact that an out-of-warranty inverter failure or a cooling system leak in the high-voltage circuit can easily result in a repair bill exceeding $5,000. For a generation of dads and DIY mechanics who grew up working on simple Corollas and Tacomas, this isn't lower maintenance. It's a high-stakes gamble, where the savings are front-loaded and the massive expenses are hidden deep in the vehicle's second decade of life. Most people don't realize that a hybrid actually has more fluids to change, not fewer, including separate cooling loops for the engine and the inverter that, if neglected, will lead to a catastrophic electronic meltdown. Furthermore, the lower maintenance lie ignores the secondary wear and tear caused by the sheer weight of these 2026 models. A hybrid version of a standard crossover or sedan often weighs between 500 and 800 pounds more than its gas-only counterpart due to the massive battery pack and electric motors. That extra weight doesn't just sit there. It puts a constant, relentless strain on the suspension bushings, the wheel bearings, and the tires. If you talk to anyone managing a fleet of hybrid taxis or delivery vehicles in major cities like London, New York, or Sydney, they will tell you that they go through sets of tires and suspension components significantly faster than they did with standard gasoline cars. You might save a few $100s on brake pads over 5 years, but you will likely spend twice that amount on premature tire replacements and front-end alignments. This is the hidden tax of the hybrid system that car companies never mention in their commercials, and it's a cost that falls directly on the owner once the initial honeymoon phase of the warranty has passed. When you are hauling that extra mass, every pothole and every corner takes a slightly larger toll on the chassis, meaning the bulletproof reputation of the older, lighter Toyotas is being traded for a few extra miles per gallon that most drivers won't even notice. The second lie being pushed by the industry is that modern 2026 hybrids offer the best of both worlds with no compromises in performance or durability. The engineering reality is that many of these new hybrids, especially the smaller downsized turbo hybrids being sold in Europe and Asia, are actually under massive mechanical stress compared to a traditional gas engine. Because these vehicles rely on small engines to both propel the car and charge the battery simultaneously, those engines often run at much higher RPMs and under higher thermal loads to maintain highway speeds, especially when the battery state of charge is low. We are seeing a trend where manufacturers use a tiny 1.5-liter turbocharged engine to do the work that a 3.5-liter naturally aspirated engine used to. To the marketing department, this looks like efficiency, but to a veteran mechanic who understands metallurgy and heat cycles, this looks like a recipe for premature turbocharger failure and increased wear on internal engine bearings. Dads who used to buy a V6 Toyota Highlander or a V6 Honda Accord knew that the engine was lazy and understressed, which is exactly why those cars could easily cross 300,000 miles without an overhaul. When you ask a tiny engine to do double time in a heavy hybrid SUV, you are trading away that legendary longevity for a few extra miles per gallon on a testing cycle. This leads into a major concern regarding the driving feel that car companies claim is improved by hybrid tech. They tell you the electric motors provide instant torque, but they don't tell you about the disconnected rubber band sensation that occurs when the gasoline engine finally kicks in to assist. In many 2026 models, the powertrain is constantly second-guessing itself, hunting for the most efficient way to balance the two energy sources. To a driver who grew up on the predictable torque of a naturally aspirated engine and a solid hydraulic automatic, this feels artificial and often hesitant. When you are trying to merge into fast-moving traffic or pass a semi-truck on a two-lane road, that split-second hesitation while the computers decide whether to use the battery or the gas engine can feel like an eternity. This is why many experienced drivers in Australia and the Middle East still prefer the boring but predictable power of a Land Cruiser or a Hilux. They want a vehicle that responds the same way every time they hit the pedal, regardless of how much charge is left in a lithium-ion pack.
The third and most frustrating lie involves the real-world fuel economy and environmental impact of these 2026 models compared to their gasoline ancestors. Manufacturers love to brag about estimated miles per gallon, but they rarely mention that hybrid efficiency falls off a cliff the moment the temperature drops below freezing or the speed limit goes above 65 miles per hour. If you live in a cold climate like Canada or Northern Europe, your 2026 hybrid will spend a significant portion of its drive time running the gasoline engine just to generate heat for the cabin, effectively negating much of the fuel savings you paid a $5,000 premium for. Furthermore, on long highway hauls at high speeds, the electric motor becomes a literal passenger rather than a helper. At those speeds, the gasoline engine is doing all the work of pushing that heavy vehicle through the air while also carrying the 500-pound battery as dead weight. The lie is the idea that the sticker MPG is a universal truth, when in reality, a traditional gas-powered car can still be more efficient for long-distance highway drivers. We also have to be honest about the total environmental life cycle, as the carbon footprint required to mine the materials for a hybrid battery is significantly higher than that of a standard gasoline car, meaning you have to drive the car for years just to reach the environmental break-even point. The psychological factor at play here is what I call defined versus undefined risk. When you buy an older Toyota Corolla or a gas-only RAV4, your risks are defined. You might need an alternator, a water pump, or a starter. These are mechanical parts that any local mechanic can fix for a few $100s. When you buy a 2026 hybrid, your risk is undefined and entirely dependent on the manufacturer. You are at the mercy of proprietary software codes, dealership-only replacement parts, and a battery pack that acts as a financial ticking clock for the vehicle's resale value. The car companies tell you the battery will last the life of the car, but they define the life of the car as the length of the warranty, which is usually only 8 to 10 years. If you plan to be the person driving that car in year 12 or 15, you are the one who will have to face the truth that the marketing department left out. This is exactly why we see so many fathers across the world refusing to trade in their boring gas cars. They aren't afraid of the future, they are just unwilling to pay for a manufacturer's experiment with their own family's long-term savings. They understand that a car is a tool for freedom, and a tool that requires a specialized computer and a high-voltage technician just to stay on the road is a tool that inherently limits that freedom. To be fair, there is a path to owning a hybrid that doesn't involve being a victim of these deceptions, but it requires a very specific maintenance strategy that contradicts the dealership's set-it-and-forget-it marketing. If you want a 2026 Toyota or Honda hybrid to actually survive the long haul, you have to ignore the low-maintenance lie and double down on proactive service. This means changing your oil every 5,000 miles to combat the massive issue of fuel dilution, where raw gasoline leaks into the oil during cold start cycles. It means replacing your inverter coolant even if the manual says it is lifetime fluid, because there is no such thing as a lifetime fluid in a high-voltage inverter circuit. It also means ensuring that the battery cooling fan and intake filters, often hidden under the rear seats or in the cargo area, are cleaned every single year to prevent the high-voltage pack from cooking itself to death in the summer heat. You have to treat the hybrid system like a high-performance machine that requires extra care, not a free lunch that saves you money with zero effort. The manufacturers won't tell you this because it makes the car seem needy and complicated, but the veteran engineers in the back of the shop know it is the only way these complex 2026 systems will ever see 300,000 miles. As we move deeper into this decade, the car industry is clearly moving toward a subscription-style future where you never truly own your car's longevity. They want you in a new finance contract every 3 to 5 years, and the modern hybrid is the perfect vehicle for that business model because it performs beautifully when it is brand new but becomes increasingly risky and expensive to own as the electronics age. The real argument isn't whether hybrids are good cars. They are often fantastic, quiet, and smooth vehicles to drive. The argument is whether the industry is being honest about the long-term trade-offs. When they tell you that a 2026 hybrid is a direct, zero-compromise replacement of the simplicity of a 2010 Corolla or a 2012 Camry, they are being fundamentally dishonest. It's a different category of machine altogether, with a different set of rules, a different maintenance profile, and a different financial risk for the second and third owner. I promised to reveal the one component that is almost never covered by your standard battery warranty, yet it is absolutely essential for your hybrid to function and can cost you a fortune. That component is the high-voltage wiring harness and the specific contactors inside the battery junction block. While the battery might have a long warranty, owners have discovered the hard way, especially in the US and Canada, that a rodent chewing through a high-voltage cable or a corroded connector caused by road salt and moisture in an issue known globally as Cablegate is often classified as environmental damage or outside influence. This results in a repair bill that can cost as much as $7,000, often totaling out the car entirely because the insurance company won't pay and the manufacturer claims it's not a defect. It is the ultimate gotcha in the 2026 hybrid era, and it's something every potential buyer needs to know before they sign that dotted line. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Are these car companies being honest about the 2026 lineup, or are we being led into a maintenance trap that will catch up to us in 10 years? Have you already dealt with battery degradation, inverter issues, or the dreaded cable corrosion? Let's get a real argument going, because the more we share the truth, the less power these marketing lies have over our wallets and our lives. We need to hold these companies accountable for the durability of the vehicles they sell us, and that starts with understanding the engineering. If you appreciate this kind of veteran car analysis that cuts through the corporate noise, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you never miss an update, and check out the video on your screen right now, where we break down why Toyota's new 0W8 oil might be the biggest mistake in their history. This is Gearhead Genius, and remember, every car has a story, but only the owners know the truth. See you in the next one.